What's up, guys? It's three-time NFL Pro Bowler, all-decade return specialist, Josh Cribbs. I want to welcome you to the College Sports Connection podcast, where Double A, Alex, and AJ host the Mid-American Conference Best.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the CSC podcast, all action, all the time. I'm your host, Alex the Captain. Joining me as always, it's AJ the Guru.
What's going on, everybody?
AJ, welcome back. We are wrapping up baseball season. We just finished up regular season softball, the MAC tournament as well. So why not have a softball coach on? AJ, who we got coming on tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a special guest on the program today. This is our first softball coach we've had on the program in nearly the 4 years we've been doing this. So very, very excited about that. She's the head coach at Bowling Green. Not only is she a coach, she's an alum, which always makes this conversation so much more fun. You're the third head coach who's an alum now on the program, which is fantastic. Head coach Candace Fenton. Coach, welcome.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
No, we appreciate you taking the time to join us and talk some Falcon softball.
Yeah.
Notice I did not use profanity there. It just says Falcon, not anything else, just for our listeners out there. So yeah, let's just kind of get into it. So AJ mentioned in the intro that you're a softball alumni, and you played under a legend, I think still the current all-time winningest coach in BG softball history. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Coach Lee Ross Shaw at the time, yes.
So kind of talk about that time with Coach Ross Shaw, and kind of talk about getting recruited to BG, because you're from north of Detroit, right? Is that kind of where home is for you?
Yep. I grew up in a town called Ortonville. It's just a little north of Clarkston, Auburn Hills area. Okay. And I was actually at the Kent State Showcase, which we still are going to as coaches now recruiting. I was in the showcase, and I was the catcher, lefty slapper speed kid. So I was a unique breed for a catcher. And I got picked up by Coach Lee Ross Shaw at that event. A unique piece to that was I didn't even know what Bowling Green was at the time. My heart was set to be a Chippewa. Now that's our, we go against the Chips. But an ironic twist to that was after I had met Coach Ross Shaw and a couple other Ohio coaches, they left and I broke my hand. I was catching and the pitcher threw the ball while the umpire was talking to me, and the gut reaction was to catch it and the batter's reaction was to hit it, and they hit the back of my hand and I popped the bone through my hand, and that was the end of my recruiting journey. But luckily I had been seen and offered by Coach and went on a visit shortly after that.
That's a unique story. I'm glad coaches didn't see that at the time, right? That's that's one of those. It's a few other conversations would have been had. So in college, you made the transition to first base, right? That's did you play catcher at all during college, or was it strictly first base? Kind of what was that transition for you?
The transition, I did a lot of activity with training and doing bullpens, but as the needs persisted, I shifted to first base because we did have my actual roommate at the time from Perrysburg, Jennifer Kernahan. She was also a catcher, same age as me. So we kind of facilitated what worked best at the time, and I shifted over to first base.
So talk about, now as a coach, and you've been on both sides of the couch now, what is that like being the one talking to these kids, having you been on that side before? Is it, the same concept? Is it the same value? Is it the same? I mean, obviously it's the same end goal, but kind of talk to me a little bit about, being on that side of giving that coach's talk now.
It is the same yet different in multiple magnitudes, because as a coach, you have to be cognizant of your approach, how you're relaying the messages, and the messages have changed since I was a player. The style of coaching, the way we approach our athletes, the holistic approach of they're a human, they're a student before they're an athlete, and really holistically supporting them versus, back in the olden days when I played, it was get your job done or get out mentality. And it was a different mentality as a whole. And I think as we evolve as coaches, as a society, we realize that, once you pour in socially, emotionally, you get a lot better results out of your athletes physically.
So with kind of in regards to those conversations, kind of you have a lot different approach philosophically today than they did back then, but also now you're fighting with things like the transfer portal. NIL is now becoming a big thing. How do those conversations happen? You know, you've got a kid. I think you guys lost a star pitcher last year to Tennessee.
Yep.
And obviously you have to figure out how to supplant that and how to replace that as best you can. What do those conversations look like with transfer students, as well as worrying about the high school recruiting?
Well, I think that everything is a teachable moment. And I think the portal can be both positive and negative depending on how you're utilizing that and how you were coaching your players to utilize that. I think that there's an interesting dynamic if it isn't the best fit or they are at a higher level and they can go play and be amazing at the next level. I think as a coach that we empower them to show appreciation and gratefulness to where they started, to the people that put a lot of time and effort and their teammates that supported them. And then we can be their biggest fans and support them and teach. I mean, that's an adulting skill, right? Like teaching someone how to advocate, teaching someone how to recognize and thank people and then apologize if it is hurtful that they're leaving. And the same scenario with my team, you know, we do have those hard conversations. Like if you feel that this is a valid experience that you need to talk to compliance or you need to go somewhere else, let's have that conversation. Let me mentor you through it. Those hard conversations are really important to have. And as an adult, we're going to have lots of hard conversations. So if we can support them and like mentor them through those processes, I think that it definitely empowers us to be a more impactful leader for those athletes. And right now, I mean, for the freshmen coming in, I guess it's all what you want, right? So for me, a portal is like an immediate need. So like if there's injuries, which we had a lot of injuries this year, or if you have like taking over a new program and a lot of kids, you know, 5 or 6 kids are portaling out and you're coming in and you got to grab at, you know, what you can get your hands on at the time. But then there's also something to be said for the kid that's a junior that's completely loyal and motivated to be a Falcon from day one, right? Mm-hmm. Like they came to you on September 1st, you had those conversations, you got them on campus. That loyalty and that ownership speaks volumes as well. Kids that are coming to camps that are visible and they have that passion and drive to bleed orange and brown. So I think that there is different scenarios in both the portal and your freshman coming in out of high school. They both have very critical pieces to the program.
So just in the few minutes we've had this conversation, if I didn't know you were a coach, I would be able to tell you were a coach. So when did that coaching bug hit you? Because I know you did some little high school, then made that jump to college. So when did you realize, oh, this is what I want to do the rest of my life?
Well, you know, it's interesting. So back in the olden days when I went to school at BGSU, the only way to get into coaching was to be a teacher. So I was like, I'm going to be a teacher because I want to coach. And I went back home to my hometown and I was the head coach of my alma mater, Ortonville Brandon High School. I took over like the JV program, then merged up to varsity. And I came back to Ohio and I got affiliated with Springfield. I'm not sure you guys have heard of like the Springfield Devils and Rob Watts. Phenomenal human being, great mentor, great coach to work under. So I went under his guidance and I started taking, excuse my dogs. I started taking over his JV program and then quickly evolved up to his varsity program as his assistant and working with the high level athletes at that level. I love it. I've always loved the sport. I eat, sleep, and drink softball since I was about 10 years old. And it just made sense to me. After the COVID pandemic, when we were quarantined and in our homes, I started doing a lot of reading and mentoring, and I was doing I was working with a travel organization, and because we couldn't actively train, I was doing mindset training, and I kind of fell into that on my own and started reading like the John Gordon books and just started researching. And I started doing book studies with older girls and younger girls about the energy bus and how to be, the driver of our bus and the positive energy versus, the energy vampires. And as I got affiliated with that, I was training athletes once we were cleared to train, and I just fell in love with the process and what it takes to be at this level. And then luckily I fell into a great position of becoming an assistant coach at BGSU as my alma mater. It felt like home, and one thing led to another, and I took over the program shortly after.
Yeah. So talking about those other stops along the way, you talked about Springfield. You were also at Elmwood local schools. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. And then you also spent time out at Total Sports in Rossford. So you have had your hand in softball literally at every stop you've been at.
Yeah, I've gone through the travel ball organization idea of building your own revenue so that you have a position, right? Through helping the kids through the recruiting process at that level. working in different varsity dynamics. And then while I was at Elmwood, I did join softball for a year. And I realized, there's different philosophies, and that wasn't necessarily a philosophy that I holistically could buy into. And then I joined the athletic department, and I became the athletic director's assistant, helping with basketball and wrestling and getting to know other athletes. And I love that as well. But my heart and my passion is softball. So I found my way to get back into it. So here we are.
Sure. You just mentioned travel ball. That was something I was a part of way back in the day. And, it seems like that has taken a whole nother step compared to what it was 15, 20 years ago. And we've had multiple coaches on, like Tim Lester, the former head coach at Western Michigan football. We talked about the importance of the two-sport athlete and how it's getting harder and harder to find because people specialize in things, like baseball, softball, basketball, because they're things they can play year-round wherever you are. So talk to me a little bit about that philosophy and how important that two-sport athlete is to you. And is it difficult to find that in softball?
For me, I don't have like a cookie cutter kid that I'm looking for, right? So, one of my incoming freshmen, she did amazing things at basketball, and I went and watched her play basketball. A lot of the times I love if my girls are going to run cross country in the fall, because that's an endurance sport and it teaches them, how to really work through that hard process. If a kid is isolated and just loves softball and that's what they do all days of the year and 24 hours a day, and that's I have no issues with that. But if it's a kid that's like, hey, I like a break, I like the leadership roles in other positions, I like the different muscles. Again, it's not a cookie cutter scenario. It's whatever they bring to the table, the leadership skill, the type of human they are, and the type of family they're coming from. Those are the things that I look for. So I'm going to support them in whatever they think is going to make them the best fit for being a Falcon.
No, and that makes sense, right? I mean, you want to find something that's going to complement your program and to help your program be successful. Looking at some of the other programs at BG currently, volleyball, Coach Tomich is one. We've had her on the show and we just absolutely love and adore her. But Coach Leffler, Coach Tomich, like there's a lot of success happening over in BG right now. A lot of things on the rise. Do you feel like all the programs more with their morale benefit from the success of other programs?
1,000%. It's really nice to have those whole department meetings where I can sit next to a Scott Leffler and he's like, "You're doing a great job, coach. It's the beginning of the process. We've all been there." So I think that it's a wonderful, like welcoming Falcon family environment. Truly. They're offering different training programs for like emotional intelligence and how to regulate your thoughts and your feelings, and working with other people in the athletic department and really just networking. I know like there's different head coaches that I plan on meeting through the summer, and Coach Talmadge is one of them. Like, I want to pick your brain. Like, how are you great? Like, what do you do? I want to watch some of their practices, because I think that with coaching, we can always be improving. We can always get better. And by watching the great be great, it helps us as a whole. So yeah, absolutely. I love being around the high motivated, the high energy, and just the optimistic, positive energy that a lot of these coaches are bringing for a new coach like myself, because I do have a lot of questions. I'll never be a coach that says I have it figured out. I'm always learning. I'm always evolving, and I want to know what others are doing that's helping them be effective. So I love that we do have those relationships at BG.
For Coach Tomich, make sure you take her to Tim Hortons for some coffee. That's
Perfect.
a little tip that we learned when we had her on the show. So take her
When
to
she gets
Tim
back
Hortons.
when she gets back in the country, I would love to take her to Tim Hortons.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, they're doing their European tour. Is that?
Yes, absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, she's doing great things with those girls.
Yeah, she really is.
Yeah, I was going to talk about your staff a little bit. 2 assistants on the program. How did you go about when you took over as a head coach? How did you go about finding assistants, and kind of how important are they, behind the scenes to make sure that you can do your duties as the head coach?
Yeah, absolutely. Finding an assistant is a daunting task for the fact of when you're doing something like this critical to help these young women be successful on and off the field and in their futures. I really have to be cognizant of someone that's going to fit my coaching philosophies, as well as somebody that I can trust and translate my information. And the 2 staff that I have, Erin Gankowski was a close friend of mine who trained with me at Total. And I played against her all through high school and college and travel ball. And we didn't know each other till recently when we both moved from Michigan to Ohio. And she's just been a loyal companion in softball for me, training pitchers. I train catchers, so we kind of go hand in hand. And she's a great personal friend of mine. We've been through a lot together with the softball relations. So that's somebody I needed a pitching coach. I'm not going to pretend like I know the ins and outs of pitching. So that was a top priority for me. And she lived right down the street. So it worked organically to get her here. And then I have Jacob Jeffries, who I met working through camps. So I work a ton of camps in the summer. I travel all over. You know, I go from Texas to Arizona, back to Ohio, to Tennessee, to Alabama. And I'm always observing, and I watched him working with athletes. And he actually worked with me in some collaboration groups. And I love the way he engaged. He's very unique and authentic in how he approaches the athletes. And I was watching him and I was like, this is a great fit for my athletes. And ironically, when I took over and I was asking my athletes for input, like, I'm building this program, like, what's the best thing that can help you guys? And I did have multiple athletes say, we would love to hear a male perspective on our staff, which is unique in a female sport, right? And so when I was doing my interviewing, I had lots of different people that went through the process, and just knowing his authenticity and who he is as a person and how he engages athletes, I knew that he would be the greatest fit for my girls, and they loved him. And honestly, my staff were very, very close. I trust them with everything, and they handle me well because I'm a high-strung human being, which I feel like sometimes comes with a head coaching position. But they're really good at keeping me level and keeping me within my zone. And I feel very open to go to them and ask for feedback. Like, am I being too assertive? Am I being realistic? Or it's the opposite. Coach, you're being too laid back. You're letting this go. You know, some are more detail oriented. So I think with the three of us, we definitely complement each other very well. And we're very close personally, besides softball.
You mentioned kind of traveling a little bit during the summer and whatnot. You also, and I don't see much on it, so I'm kind of asking a little bit more open-ended here. The Fenton Fast Pitch camps, is that something that is sponsored by Bowling Green, or is that a separate entity? How does that work?
Well, our camps, different universities have different philosophies.
Okay.
So if you're the head coach of any of our programs, you go and get your own LLC, and then you run it at the campus. It's for like our prospects, our future prospects, but
Okay.
like essentially I'm renting the facility and running my own camp for Fenton Fast Pitch. The money goes back into our enhancement. It goes towards the athletes. But I think for insurance purposes, we go through our own entity. So it's not, the university is not responsible for that.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. That's because you see those coaches camps pop up everywhere. It feels like, some coaches do satellite camps. They do them on campus. I think we see probably advertisements for 15 football camps for every school every summer. So I was just kind of curious as to how that worked. And yeah, it's a great recruiting tool too. You get the kids on campus, get them to check out the facilities, get them to interact with the coaches. I mean, what better way than to have in-person coaching opportunities for recruitment?
Well, and what helps me is if I see kids that I'm on the recruiting trail, watching them play and interact on the field, if I can invite them to come to a camp and I can see if our personalities are clicking, it's a personal investment, right? Like, can they take my style of coaching? Are they receptive? Are they, positive? How are they going to overcome the failure when we push them and make them, really go out on a limb and challenge them at a camp? And we can see in that way I can also have my athletes working with them, and my athletes can get a good read on what fits our culture and what fits the type of mentality that we're developing.
Now, how many of these high schoolers know where BG is? This is one of those things you have to explain. Oh, we're near Toledo, kind of near Michigan, kind of in that corner of Indiana, Michigan, Illinois. Especially if you go down to Tennessee, Alabama, those areas, they have no idea probably what the MAC is, I'd imagine.
Absolutely. I say Bowling Green. Sometimes I get, Kentucky. I'm like, I get that a lot, right? I think a lot of times you sell yourself to these athletes, the type of passion you have for the game, your program. Like, I eat, sleep, and drink BGSU. So for me, it's a very easy task. And definitely utilize the idea of we're, south of Toledo. But I mean, once I get them on campus and they get affiliated, like I bring kids in from Florida, from Texas. I've had kids come in from California. I just have to get them on campus, and they just embrace it, and they like the small town mentality, if that's what they're looking for, right? We all have different journeys. And if they're looking for a nice community, a nice small family type community, BG is a good fit for those kids. And sometimes they do have to do all of explaining of where we're located and what we are. But once I get them there, they learn real quick what we're about.
Sure. You talked about, loving the game, and just the game of softball in general over the past 3 or 4 years has just taken a massive boom on the popularity of ESPN when it comes to the World Series. It's on every night. the games the past few years have just been phenomenal. So as a coach, seeing that growth from a former player to now being a coach, how exciting is that for you in the future of where the game's going?
The growth of softball is just absolutely exciting to me because as it's been such an important, it was so hard to find games to watch ever before, like, COVID. I think one of the positive perspectives that came out of that whole scenario is they put a lot of things on TV and people realize like softball's legit. Like it is so fast. It is so exciting. Like it's amazing. So I think that, with that growth, it just helps us in our programs because we definitely want them to evolve and grow, and we want to be on the big screens and we go to the big schools, and a lot of people want that experience, right? So I think for us, it's just an ever growing game that I think the more people that start to understand it and realize like it is intense, it's a game that like it can go good or bad very quickly, and it's a lot of mind struggles. Who's going to overcome their own challenges that they're giving themselves a lot of the times. And I think in life in general, that like describes life and just overcoming obstacles. So for me, I love that I can watch it on TV. I've got ESPN Plus on everything that I have at home, and I'm always watching who's playing, and I'm checking stats, and I'm checking the scores. So I love that it's become such a popular scenario for us to watch on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been to sports bars where it's been on, and people are sitting there and they're engaged and watching it, and especially over the last couple of World Series, they've just been phenomenal games.
Mm-hmm.
Like those Oklahoma, Texas, those programs, and BG's on the rise too. So it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and it's interesting. The interesting part is like different people are excelling at different times. Mm-hmm. So based on who's transferred out or who's transferred in, who's got the bullpen, right? Like that's literally like the dynamic. If you have a deep bullpen, you're more likely to be able to compete at the highest level. And I think that with the portal adds a little extra twist of interesting for the audience because you don't know where someone's going or who's going to be losing who or who's going to be gaining who. So I think that as much as it's frustrating for some people, I think it adds an extra little piece of, you never know. That's just the unknowingness of this game.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the portal. When kind of doing a little bit of research on you and, your time as a player and whatnot coming into tonight, I was looking at one of the articles talking about your 2003-2004 season outlook, and how you were coming back, I believe, from an injury the previous year. And I was reading the article, and it was like it mentioned a transfer from Toledo, and back then that was such a rarity. Now it's like almost everybody seems like a transfer. So that's just vastly different back then. It's just wild to see how much the portal's exploded just in the last couple of years.
Absolutely. Your option was either you made it work or you were done with the sport that you loved. That kind of was what it was. And if you transferred, it was almost like you had a stigma sometimes, like, whoa, like what happened? Why would you transfer? Like it was very unheard of. And sometimes I think, for the portal for kids that are in situations that are not conducive for their growth or their mental health, I think it's a great thing because I don't think that you should have to quit the game that you absolutely love and grew up doing your whole entire life based on an experience that's not conducive for you. So I do think that it helps in some scenarios where they need an out. They don't want to give up the game that they love. Now, I do think sometimes it can be manipulated and obviously with everything, you can't always trust, are people following the rules? Is compliance being followed? Like we get that. That's in everything that we do. And we just have to surround ourselves with great people and you don't have to worry about the moral conflict.
Well, and one of the arguments that I've often heard, especially with the transfer portal as it is now, is coaches can pick up and go whenever. And, you're not, sure, you're breaking a contract, but a coach can go take a job at another school. Why can't an athlete follow that coach or go, whatever? Right. So I think that to allow it to be a little bit more flexible than it has been. Now, I think the NCAA this next year is scaling it back where you're allowed one free transfer before you're forced to sit out a year. So I think that it's finding that balance, but it's been, I think a couple of the coaches have talked to us how it's literally a spreadsheet on like the NCAA website. Yes. And you don't really know, I think their school and their year and sometimes what position they play. And that's about it.
Yeah. Cause they're kind of like, there's some kids that had obviously the portal opened up this week for softball. So it's like hotcakes, right? And like you see a kid's name and like you go to where they were at and they're off the roster because obviously once they go in the portal, they're released from you, right? We have to sign and they're released and they forfeit their scholarship and the whole nine, which I don't think they necessarily understand that sometimes when they're getting in the portal. Like, are they getting educated? Like if you sign here, you're going to lose your academic money and you won't get that back if you transfer, and you're going to be forfeiting your your softball money as well. Are you going to get that much where you're going? Is that even important? Sometimes it's not even a factor. It's a master's program that they're seeking. So, but I do think that, that education piece of what exactly is going to happen when I go in that portal. And if you forfeit your spot on the roster, they don't always have to bring you back because that's kind of a touchy subject. Like if you're going to go in the portal, well, then typically as a coach to protect our program, we're going to replace that position or recruit around it, right? Because we have to protect ourselves and our program. And the athletes that are committed to us. So I think that, it's an interesting dynamic. It adds a twist to what we do, which I love. I love challenges. I love controversy in that sense. Like it's solving the puzzle.
Kind of want to get into this team and this season and whatnot. You're looking at your roster. How exciting is it for you to have people not only from, Michigan and Ohio, we have Indiana, there's Pennsylvania, Virginia, California, Illinois. You're kind of starting to spread the wings, you could say, of the Falcon brand, and getting some transfers in from Rhode Island and whatnot. How exciting is that for you as a coach to being able to touch kind of all areas of the country?
I love it. I love bringing different perspectives and different views and different dialogues and just the whole nine to what we're doing. And it's like a melting pot. And I love that because everyone has different backgrounds. Everyone has different stories to tell. Everyone has a different perspective. And I think the uniqueness that we're bringing is we can put all that together. We do a lot of culture training. We do a lot of like mental health. I have our sports psych, wonderful. We have a new sports psych program and the director meets with the girls bi-weekly. And then I also have our life coach, Dr. Michael Brown. He meets with the girls as well. And I think that teaching them to evolve and do wonderful things with diversity within our own team sets them up for a great future in any career they're taking. So I love, when I go out to California and I'm recruiting, I'll be out there this summer and my California kids like, let me know. We go out, we have coffee, I see the family, and I just love that. Right. And then, I go out to Texas and I've got some connections out there, and a former player, Candace Fenton at the time is Candace Tigas now. She's in Arizona and they're running travel ball organizations and tournaments. So I go out there and work camps and I meet her daughter and like all the kids that are coming up the pipeline in Arizona. And I just think that as we do that, we just develop such a camaraderie and people that are interested in BGSU and being a Falcon and just understanding what we have to offer. So I absolutely love going elsewhere and bringing people in to be a part of this community.
Sure. Well, if you make your way to Colorado, that's where I'm at. Love to meet you out here if you ever make it out here. But it's cool looking at the roster because I grew up in Indiana. So I see you grow from Crown Point. I see Zionsville. My friend's the head coach or head lacrosse coach at Zionsville.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, Crown Point, they were on the cover of Sports Illustrated for baseball because like 9 of their 12 players were going to Division I that year. I think 8 of them are in the major leagues right now.
Yeah.
So it's great to see that, just selfishly my Hoosiers make it out and start doing some great things out of some really quality programs.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exciting. And that's like our baseball coach, the shortstop that I have coming in, or middle infielder I have coming in this fall. She's from the same school that our baseball coach is from. So it's really exciting.
Oh, that's really cool.
He's really excited to see her there, and they're Pirate, and I forget the exact name of the school, but he's like, oh, I know these Pirates kids are built different. Like, that's great to see that, his alma mater is coming into the softball program, and that just helps connect the sports even more.
Sure. Now, this season, obviously not the season I think you guys wanted. I don't think it's, unfortunately, just with the records. I mean, you mentioned a lot of injuries. How does a team kind of respond to a lot of those injuries? I mean, how do you keep battling, especially when the injuries are piling up as much as they did for you guys? How do you get them to respond? And all right, guys, we got to buckle up. You guys finished the season with a win. Great way to finish the year. How do you get the team to stay focused through a tough season like that?
I think what I always try to go back to is controlling our controllables. And I try to let them know there's always a lesson to be learned. So the first the first tournament that we have indoors at Rosemont, our center fielder, leadoff batter, like Greta, goes for a ball at the fence and has a traumatic injury, like career-ending injury. Not only is it hard to lose a kid like Greta, it's hard to watch it in the process. The team endures it. We've had other injuries with our other outfielder the year before, Peyton Dolis, when she got hurt at Ohio State. So the girls have been through a lot. I mean, that is traumatic when you watch a teammate and their leg isn't where it should be. Even as a coach, you're like, what am I looking at? Right. But I think, it gives opportunities to young players that wouldn't have otherwise had as many opportunities. So we talk about the pressure that some of the younger girls felt like to be Greta, like, I can't be her. Well, that's not what we're expecting. We're expecting you to be you, and we're expecting you to learn. We're expecting there will be mistakes and there will be failure, but we're expecting to coach you through that as a freshman, sophomore, junior, because, when you have a kid like Greta, it's really hard to rotate that playing time because she's such a dynamic leader, physically, emotionally, the whole thing. Like, she leads by example 95% of her time. And with her injury, we had to reevaluate, like, okay, well, now we're going to try different leadoff batters. Sometimes it worked for us, sometimes it didn't. And that's part of the growth process. We're going to try different kids in the outfield. Sometimes it worked for us, sometimes it didn't. Peyton Dola stepped into the center field position as an amazing leader, mentoring the younger girls. Had we not had that injury, we wouldn't have known that she was going to step in and be such a leader, who I then named her captain because she was doing such a great job and she's so invested in what we're doing and she's bought in and she's a part of the process. So, I mean, as awful and as much as we never want those things to happen, I think if we twist it in the fact of it's a teachable moment, what are we learning? We don't understand it in the moment. We don't understand why this is happening to us. And yes, it absolutely is terrible, but how are we going to get better and how are we going to level up because of it? It might not show this year. Maybe those freshmen that were able to step in, they're going to be on their A game and they're going to dial it in next year because they had so many reps this year. So, I mean, we did have a lot of young kids and a lot of non-starters in some really critical positions this year. It's just development. This year, we definitely looked at it with the girls. We wanted more wins, but at the end of the day, we left feeling pretty confident that they got a lot of great reps and everybody left feeling very valued and very validated for what they did put into the program.
Sure. You just mentioned too, a lot of young kids getting a lot of reps. You look at your schedule, the non-conference schedule was tough this year. Florida and Delaware State, Valpo, DePaul, these big programs. How important is it for your program to play schools like a third-ranked Florida? Because the competition is going to be great no matter who's on the field at that time. And, you're going against a pitcher who's phenomenal. And you're going to get good stuff at every bat. So how important is it for those? I mean, those reps have to be crucial because you can't replicate that anywhere else.
Absolutely. I think that we have to put these kids in positions of pressure because ultimately that's where we have to level up when we do get to the end of the MAC season. And we do, our main goal is to get to that MAC tournament eventually. And I think that if we continue to go against the great, my perspective for the girls is we have to see great to be great. Like, I want to watch Tim Walton. I want to watch all those coaches. I want to see their connection with their girls. I want to see their coaching styles. I want my girls to see how they handle their mistakes or how they handle their successes. I want my girls to see what it looks like to be that dynamic program and then challenge them. So I was so excited about that game in Florida because we held them and we battled back. Like, if we got down, we would get back up. And if we got up, they would come back up, right? And it was just a great battle. And if I could replicate that mentality that my girls had at that game, and we kept reflecting back on that game, like, I know you guys are capable of amazing things. I saw it in Florida. You guys killed it. Our goal when we went into that game was we want to play 7 innings and we're going to focus on inning by inning, winning the inning. That is our goal this year. We had to focus like specifically smaller goals because the holistic picture was a little too much sometimes. So, I saw a great amount of talent and battle and just grittiness when we were in Florida. And I'm excited to see that coming out of these younger kids now that they have a year of experience. They have, they understand the life of being a college athlete. They understand the resources that are available, and they're coming in knowing what this life looks like.
When you were playing, did you play at any Power 5 programs, traveled to any of those Big Ten schools?
Yeah, we went out to Arizona State at one point. I do remember I was playing first base and I moved back to the outfield because I was like this, some big hitters were coming up and they're not going to bunt. I'm going to stand back. So I do remember we played Arizona State, we played Michigan, just like we do now because they're nice and close. We played Ohio State. And I believe we went to New Mexico for a tournament, and we saw some big teams out there as well.
So I did want to ask kind of about the scheduling. Each school kind of does things a little bit differently, and each sport does things a little bit differently. I know basketball talks about they prep their next season schedule during the previous off season. Football, they plan it out years in advance. What does that look like for softball? Do you kind of look at a list of pre-MAC tournaments and say, hey, we want to attend this, or is it invitation based? What does that look like when putting that schedule together?
Well, there is an interesting email strand of like hundreds of coaches, and they send like invites, like, oh, like one I saw was like California State is hosting a friendly, or like Fullerton is having an event, and they just put on different weekends. So essentially we just build out what we want it to look like. A lot has to do with budget. Can we take a flight? Can we afford a flight? How long is the drive? What weekend does it fall on? And we just kind of navigate through that. So I've already started looking at going to like the Ohio State Charity Classic Invitational that they have in the fall, a nice and close scenario. So like in the fall, we stay local. It's a one-day event. Like we went to Notre Dame last year. We went to Michigan last year, and like I have great relationships with a lot of these coaches, and it's as simple as me saying, hey, you guys have anything going on? We would love to come in. And then we just have that dialogue and set it up that way. And then preseason is like responding to emails. Like Tim Walton, they were looking for an extra team, and I jumped on. I was like, we would love to come out there. And that's how I connected with him.
Yeah, I'm always curious about scheduling things like that, because it's so interesting hearing different coaches talk about, well, this is a school that I was a grad assistant at, so it'd be great to play them, or, so it's always really interesting to hear different coaches and the reasoning that they try to schedule different programs.
And so the way I did my preseason was I tried to do like Rosemont was the first weekend, which is other teams that are a relatively mid-major type of level to play Division I. And then we would go out to Florida, which is going to be high level, challenging situation. And then after that, we go to Evansville, which is another like mid-major area, like local area teams. So I try to like balance it. Like we're going to go and really be pushed under the pressure one weekend, but then the next weekend, it should be a weekend where we can come back to the table, reevaluate, and be competitive, and hopefully pull some wins off that weekend and rebuild our confidence, and then go to Auburn. And that was, obviously a challenging experience as well. So I try to balance it so that we're being challenged, and then we have opportunity to build and put that into play at a more realistic scenario.
You mentioned the Evansville tournament, obviously getting to play teams closer to the area. Is that something BG's ever looked at, or at least to your knowledge, hosting a tournament? Because I feel like Evansville wouldn't be that warm in February.
No, it definitely isn't, but they have a turf facility. That's the difference.
Okay.
If the dirt and the freezing and the thawing can play a challenging role, but if they have turf, we're there. So Ball State potentially.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of leading my next question. How much of the scheduling is based off of warm weather, which makes a lot of sense.
Well, and I do have those conversations with administration. They're like, do you really have to go to Florida? And I'm like, well, kind of, because a lot of the first weekend when we were inside at Rosemont, a lot of the teams that were driving to Tennessee and Alabama, like they were getting rained out because weather is not conducive always. But we definitely have to travel south to try to play our odds with some warmer weather. Or indoor facilities obviously is a safe option as well. But we definitely like to go where we can get some sunshine and get out of a dome and play in some softball weather where there's sun. And
you'll never make it to Colorado because it's currently snowing in May. So
that happened to us last year. We were there in May and we were playing in the NISC, and we had a snow delay, and I was like, are you kidding me?
In May of all
we have a snow delay in May. We're used to that around here, but not out there.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was still wearing a winter coat last week up here in Toledo. So
it was 75 yesterday, and it was 30 and blowing snow today. So there's that.
At least you have mountains. That's amazing.
We do have Pikes Peak right outside my balcony. It's beautiful.
He sends me pictures all the time, and I'm just like, I hate you.
Yeah, it's gorgeous because we're in Colorado Springs.
Oh, so that's amazing.
It's perfect here. And
I just send him pictures of downtown Toledo. I don't know why he doesn't appreciate it as much. I don't know.
I can send you pictures of the cornfields if you would like.
There we
go. I mean, I worked on the Mud Hens, so I've done my time in downtown Toledo. Been there, done that. had a good time and got out. So
now I'm in Colorado living my best life. No big deal.
Right.
well,
right.
it helps when you marry somebody from this part of the country. So my wife's from Bozeman, Montana. So we're saying, let's go back out here. So it worked out well.
That works out. See, I married a local Bowling Green gentleman who works and lives out here. So I'm here for the long haul, guys.
You're stuck.
I'm
Here you
stuck.
go. That's awesome.
There's worse places to be stuck. So it's,
Yeah, I love it. I've been here since like 2000. I took a small detour and came back. So
there you go.
Yeah, I was gonna say you chose to come back, so there's
it.
something to it.
I'm raising my family here. I absolutely love it.
Sure.
Oh my goodness. Can you please stop? Sorry. Can you please stop them?
We want to get their perspective on your parenting
Yeah.
as well. So
They have a lot of perspective. Well, they hear one little like minute noise outside and they got to protect me.
yeah, absolutely. Makes sense.
Yeah. So I do love animals. So that's another thing about me. Like instead of one dog, I have to have 3 because I'm obsessed with my animals and that's my therapy is I cuddle them.
What kind of dogs?
I have a miniature Shih Tzu, which is like the most amazing animal in the world. Her name is Pippi. And then I have a cockerdoodle, and then I have an Aussie doodle. Which I glutton for punishment with 2 doodles in this house. Yeah, I'm a mom before I'm a coach now.
Right. So as we wind this down, we've just got a couple more questions. We both have kind of I jokingly call them softball questions. Talking to a softball coach makes it a little bit funnier, but I'll ask mine, then I'll let AJ cap it off with his. For me, it's as a former MAC athlete and a current MAC coach, what has it meant to you to be in the Mid-American Conference?
For me, it was like a non-negotiable. Like it's all I know. Does that mean I'll never leave and go outwards? I can't say that at this point, but I have no interest in leaving the MAC. It's the teams I played against as an athlete. As a Falcon, I wore the same uniforms, and I have intentions of bringing back the old pinstripes that I used to play in, and the girls are excited about that. So for me, it was like BG or bust mentality. Like I had other options, other positions that were open in different scenarios, and my heart and my passion is in the MAC and is being a Falcon and changing a program to really evolve around the concept of the community and the support that we do have, and just really building a legacy and changing the dynamics and the trajectory of Falcon softball.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
I think you guys are on the right track. And my final one here is one we asked every coach who's played the sport with NIL. If you could have endorsed a product when you were playing, what would you have wanted to put your name on?
Oh, that's a good one. I love shoes. Anyone that knows me knows I have a real shoe obsession. Like my assistants say they're going to build a rack in my office because I'm obsessed with Jordans. I would have to say I'd have to be somewhere in like the shoe realm.
Okay.
I would love to have a deal to represent some sweet Jordans to some extent.
There you go.
We'll
Coach Tomich said something vegan, some vegan brand, right, Alex?
Yeah. She wanted to do a total burger or something like that. That or some coffee. Yeah, that was what Coach Tomich was really all about. So
her sneaker game is nice too.
Her shoe game is solid.
I know. I've noticed. I keep my eyes on everyone's shoes. I have to say, our athletic department has some pretty amazing shoes, and I bought both of my assistants like custom shoes.
Mm-hmm.
They're Air Force Ones with the orange and black and white, because I was like, if you're gonna be on my staff, you got to have good shoes. So.
You got to look good, right? Yeah.
Look good, feel good, play good.
Exactly. The girls say it all the time, so we just have to take that as coaches.
That's awesome.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This has been a fun conversation. Looking forward to crossing paths with you, obviously, down the road. I'm just up in Toledo, so I'm not too far away. And of course, AJ's out in Colorado, so you got to go visit him. I can't bring him back, unfortunately. But no, thank you so much.
I can get games on TV, though.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. He can cheer you on from out there.
There you go. Just got to get an orange shirt on, and we're over there.
There's a package he's had it for about 3 months. There's
a hat on the way, so it's it'll be there.
We're spreading. Fridays we do the orange outs around here, so we got to start emulating that across the country.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, in all seriousness, Coach, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you and your time. AJ, do you have anything else you wanted to throw out there tonight?
Appreciate it, Coach. Best of luck with the off season. Get everybody healthy, and we'll be excited to follow you guys next year.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys, for your time and your attention to my program, my girls. Amazing. And I'm excited for them to go and show out for everybody as they continue to build and grow.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.